Chair, you will not do that again, please. When the clerk prepares a list, you have to go by the order in which it is entrusted. I find it deplorable that you basically shifted a list that had been prepared half an hour before the meeting. I'm going to vote against this motion for an extension. As you know, Mr. Chair, on Monday I served notice that I'll be withdrawing NDP 1 and intend to withdraw NDP 2 in favor of the block's amendments to this bill. I have two things to say. First off, that the filibuster and the games that we've seen both from Conservatives and Liberals around this bill, I think have been very counterproductive on consideration of the legislation. We've had filibusters from the Conservatives now for a couple of weeks on a variety of things, trying to block consideration of the bill. Now we have the Liberals trying to block consideration of the bill. I believe the bill can and should be adopted today with the amendments that make sense and improve the legislation. And Mr. Theriault has offered a couple of paths of solutions, and I support those. And I've indicated last Monday, after consultations with the Canadian Health Food Association, that I would be supporting Mr. Theriault's amendments. So I believe we need to move to clause by clause. We need to complete consideration of the bill, make those improvements that are necessary so that the bill will also pass through the House of Commons. My final point is this, Mr. Chair. I have circulated a notice of motion, as you know, that states responds to the concerns within the natural health product industry regarding the lack of consultation when it comes to regulatory changes, including Health Canada having to justify measures with a clear rationale, provide evidence to justify these measures, examine whether defining therapeutic product is the best language, and ensuring that Health Canada conduct authentically representative consultations with stakeholders in the industry, and that this be reported to the House. To make it clear and transparent with all members of this committee, I intend to move that motion only once we have considered and completed clause-by-clause consideration of the bill. This bill should be completed today. I would hope that both Conservatives and Liberals would end the games that they've been playing around this bill, that we can improve the bill because it does require improvement, and that we can move forward then to other items on our agenda in the coming weeks within the Health Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. Dr. Ellis.
Thanks very much, Chair. And you know, as you might say in politics, wow, that was a bit rich, given the fact that Mr. Julian's original motion, NDP 1, was the wrecking motion for this wrecking amendment for this bill. Everybody around this table knows it, and what Mr. Julian should be doing is saying thank you to the Conservative team who saved his bacon, considering the fact that if we would not have talked at the last meeting, he would not have had the ability to consult with the stakeholders, which he clearly failed to do previously, and understand that his amendment wrecked this bill totally and absolutely. And now, very sadly, he's trying to turn the table. Let's just call this what it is. Absolutely ridiculous political theater from somebody who made a giant mistake and refuses to admit it. Now, that would be the appropriate thing to do, is to say your wrecking amendment, NDP 1, would have wrecked the bill. And you're sorry for that. And thank you, Conservative team, once again for saving my bacon. But will you do that? No. You're going to get on your soapbox and say that you now are the savior of the natural health products industry. This is insanity. We have been here fighting this since the last time that your coalition with the Liberals allowed the omnibus bill to pass that created this mess in the first place. So if you would have stood up in the original instance, none of this would have happened.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Sad state of affairs.
Point of order. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Dr. Ellis again seems to forget that he has to direct his comments through you.
That's a fair point, Dr. Ellis.
But he didn't challenge the truth.
I will take that point.
It
Chair,
drags
you are
down
correct.
decorum when you attack someone directly. It's way better when you do it through the chair.
I don't know about that, Chair, but you know what? I think the point has been made here of exactly what has happened. That member of the NDP, that person down there at the end of the table, who decided to team up with the Liberals to attempt to wreck this bill, Chair, is unacceptable. It was unacceptable on behalf of the thousands of stakeholders from whom we received emails Tuesday evening. Thousands. And I know why that member changed his mind, Chair, through you. I know why he changed his mind, because he too received those same emails. Anyway, that being said, I would like to seek unanimous consent to pass Mr. Theriault's two amendments to this bill and move forward.
We're on a motion.
I know, but it's interesting.
So,
Thanks very much, Chair. You know, I guess in spite of the fact that Mr. Nakvi has an entire department at his disposal, it's clear that he didn't consider this beforehand. And you know, that's a sad state of affairs. This is a substantive amendment, and no disrespect to you, Mr. Lee, but this certainly does not give anybody on this side of the table any chance to really consider and to look at the act and understand how it may apply. You expect us to make this decision on the fly. Mr. Nakvi, as the rest of us did, had the ability to put forward any amendments that he wanted to, and obviously now at the 11th hour chooses to make a substantive sub-amendment to a very straightforward BQ2. That being said, I think there's a couple of things to consider. If this bill went back to the House unamended, none of these powers would actually exist at all. And I think the other ridiculous thing that we fail to consider here is that there is no substantiation that recall powers need to be extended at all. Nobody has provided one shred of evidence. In fact, we've asked for it. Sadly, the NDP Liberal coalition had voted against a common sense conservative motion to compel people who talked about serious adverse events to bring them forward. Then we wouldn't even have to have Mr. Julian's motion. We wouldn't even have to talk about it because we would have had evidence to consider, which once again he voted against in his lack of support to the natural health product industry, Chair.
Point of order.
That being said,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
point of
that's what you did.
That is complete disinformation. I move the UC that actually compels that information.
when you get the floor, you'll be able to address that, but it's not appropriate to do it through a point of order. Go ahead, Dr. Ellis.
Well, thanks very much, Chair. Again, as you know, we have an experienced parliamentarian who clearly doesn't know the rules. That being said, he did vote against the Conservative motion to require those people who made disparaging remarks to provide that information to this committee, which again didn't happen. That being said, I think the other thing for folks around this table to consider is, again, what's the evidence to say that ephedrine or pseudoephedrine are a significant problem inside the NHP industry and that we need this regulation? Does anybody have any evidence? Mr. Nakvi have any evidence? I see that there is no evidence to say that this is necessary. And I guess I would like to ask the experts here from the department to say, are ephedrine and pseudoephedrine being addressed anywhere else by this government? And if so, where? And what is the likelihood of this, once again, substantive sub-amendment foisted upon the committee playing a significant role in the illegal trade and traffic of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So there is presently in place an interim order addressing ephedrine and pseudoephedrine. It basically requires the intervention of a pharmacist to be able to access it. This is for reasons that we don't want it out being made into methamphetamine. So there is a legal operation there. It's being made under the interim order power, which only lasts for a year. And the departmental intent or hope is to be able to move this over to the supplementary rules. So you really land it in a spot where we can deal with the issue.
Thanks very much, and through you, Chair. What you're telling me is, and the the requirement for ephedrine and pseudoephedrine to be held behind the counter in pharmacies is not something new. This has been going on for some time now, and I see your concurrence on that. That being said, why would we muddy the waters inside the natural health products legislation that we have before us that we know is important to 80% of Canadians, so Health Canada or the clueless Minister of Health can introduce legislation because he can't figure out how to do it any other way? Is that the answer to the question?
Mr. Chair, I think the departmental intent always was to mitigate the safety risk. That's why they, after the body that makes suggestions for behind the counter or not, stepped away from the issue. In fact, they made a ruling that they would not deal with natural health products anymore. The department intervened to make sure, again, that we're protecting against the manufacture of methamphetamine. And so there's a law there now. It's sitting on the books. It's operating. It's functioning quite well, in fact. And the only idea here is that we'd like to remake it. Again, the department would like to remake it to make sure that protection subsists and it stays, making sure that the product doesn't go astray into organized crime.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, are you telling me that there is no other legislation besides this legislation that the Department of Health could have found to protect Canadians from using ephedrine and pseudoephedrine to create methamphetamine? That's question number one. So put that in your back pocket. Number two is related to, please enlighten the committee as to how many instances inside the NHP industry have there been difficulties with ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, specifically in its use to create meth or crystal meth?
So the first question, Mr. Chair, is basically that it is a health product and it's under the Food and Drugs Act, and then under that, the Natural Health Product Regulations. So because it's there, we needed to find a way to allow it still to be sold as a natural health product. You don't want to, I mean, one way to do it is to remove it from the market and put it in a controlled scheme. We want it to still be presented to the market so people can use it, but then not abused. So the control is really on making sure it's not sold in large quantities to those that want to abuse it. That's really the mechanism. And I would refer you to the rationale given to the public in making the interim order. It had the evidence. It had discussions. We had discussions with enforcement, law enforcement, to make sure who were in favor of this, to make sure that we controlled the behavior. It's pretty egregious to have the methamphetamine out there. And so really that was the intent.
Thanks very much, sir. I appreciate that. And through you, Chair, one more time, because I didn't know this was coming, how could I possibly prepare and read the egregious reports to which you refer? I'll ask you one more time. How many times have natural health product manufacturers or distributors been implicated in using ephedrine or pseudoephedrine in the creation of methamphetamines?
So, Mr. Chair, it's not the industry. The industry makes their product, their health product. After that, it leaves them. It's out on retail shelves, so it's beyond their control at that point. And so it's really not the companies doing the repurposing. That's not really their business model. It's the organized crime goes and buys a quantity and then repurposes it in their labs.
I understand that, Mr. Lee, and I guess what you're suggesting, excuse me, is that somebody could make a significant purchase of bulk amounts of natural health products containing ephedrine or pseudoephedrine and use them for nefarious purposes. My question to you, to the best of your knowledge, has that ever happened?
Yes, law enforcement has raised that as a concern, that it is being repurposed. Yeah.
Sorry, they raised it as a concern. I understand that, but has it happened? And if so,
yes.
Please tell us, enlighten us. When did it last happen?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't have that detail, but again, it was a foundation for making the interim order. We did consult with the provinces, we consulted with law enforcement and the sector, actually. There is support generally to make sure that, again, the product can be sold on the market as a natural health product. It's very useful for that. but it's also then not abused and you can't buy it in large quantities. So again,
No,
the
Mr.
foundation
Lee,
is in that order.
I understand that part, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do understand what the concern is. My question to you is, has this actually happened, or is it a theoretical concern?
It was not based on a theoretical concern.
So I guess, once again, here we are. We've been down this road with respect to natural health products many times, and sir, this is not directed to be specifically negative towards you, but what we hear is these thinly veiled ideas that say, yes, this has happened, and not one person has been able to give specific evidence or table it with this committee, nor has there been a desire, sadly, amongst the other members of this committee to have that information tabled to be considered. And I think that's irresponsible of everybody who's raised a concern here. We've heard another group that said we have 700 adverse events. And one of the adverse events they named is somebody read a label wrong and they were dissatisfied with the product they have. Now, is that an adverse event? I don't think. Now, again, as I've said previously, 13,000 Canadians, seniors every year, are hospitalized because of prescription products. Now, does that mean they're bad? No. Does that mean we need to gut the regulation related to prescription drugs? I don't think so, but it might. Now, here we are again. We're left with somebody saying, I think there's been a report, or maybe there has been, and I don't know what the report is. Nobody's showing it to me. And, do you have it with you? Can you bring it up on your phone and can you distribute it to the committee? If you have those things, I think that's appropriate here. Because once again, Mr. Nakvi, with his lack of preparedness, has foisted upon the committee a substantive amendment, which might be important for the safety of Canadians, and it might not be. How could we possibly be expected to make a decision when, if this is that an important an amendment, once again, Mr. Nakvi should have done his homework and he should have submitted an amendment like the rest of everybody around this table did. So what do we have once again? Oh, this is a sub-amendment. And Chair, I guess the other thing that I think I would ask you to consider is if this is that substantive an amendment that changes the original intent of the amendment, it's a sub-amendment, then is it really admissible? And I think that that's a very significant thing to consider here because we do not have any evidence provided to the committee to make an appropriate decision with respect to pseudoephedrine. And I think the difficulty here as good legislators sitting around the table, and especially in the fact that we're in the midst of a study on drugs and drug use inside this country here at Health Committee, we understand the difficulties associated therein. Certainly, you want to be cautious. I understand that. We can't reduce the risk to zero. The difficulty here, though, is again, we have a substantive amendment that's unsubstantiated. I think the other part that we need to understand clearly is if this amendment fails to pass, do you have the ability under the Food and Drug Act to make amendments outside of this particular bill, Bill 368? Is there ability to make amendments outside of Bill 368 to protect Canadians from the potential diversion of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, whether it be from prescription, non-prescription, over-the-counter, or natural health products? Do you have that ability, yes or no? And feel free, you don't have to answer yes or no. You can expand if you so desire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, if the hypothetical is if we did not have the supplementary rules order in play, would we be able to address the ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, and potentially other substances? The answer is not in the way we have in the interim order. We could try to make the interim order again. But again, that lasts a year. It really is reserved for situations of, very high-level emergency. Here we thought it was justified. But again, it really is important to find a stable solution for this. And that really was the most fitting from an instrument point of view.
Sorry, so through you, Chair, what you're telling this committee is if Bill 368 brought forward by my colleague didn't exist, there's no other way for your department to address pseudoephedrine or ephedrine getting into the wrong hands? Is that what you're telling me? I'm sorry, I don't believe that, but if that's what you're telling me, that's what you're telling me.
I'm not sure that that's what
Thank
I
you, Blaine.
said, Mr. Chair. I think what we did was we tried to create the best solution we could. So again, the natural health product could be out there on the shelves. We're not interfering with it as a legitimate product. We didn't want to do that. But all the rule does is it's quite simple. It just says make sure that somebody doesn't show up basically and buy a whole crate of it and walk off when again it's not for personal use.
Mr. Lee, again, I'll interrupt you. We understand that portion of it. My point is this. If Bill 368 did not exist, and sorry, you've known that Bill 368 has existed for some time, and I'm supposed to believe today that a substantive amendment brought forward by Mr. Nakvi with respect to this very specific but important problem would not have been able to be addressed anywhere else. And I'm also supposed to believe that he thought this up between Tuesday and today, and that it shouldn't have been brought forward as an amendment on its own. Is that what I'm supposed to believe? Because I don't believe it.
So, Mr. Chair, again, to be precise, I don't think I was conclusive at all on not being able to do it another way. I think the deliberation was, and again, the supplementary rules order works against an unintended use. So we approve with an intended use. This is an abuse that goes beyond that. It was an instrument specially created for that. It also works for the nicotine replacement products. The theme of each of these products is really that it's being used in a way or presented in a way that's not the intended use. So that was the departmental thinking, that was the best way to solve it. It doesn't say that there's not another way, but that was the best way to solve it.
So again, just for clarity, is there another way besides interfering with the passage of Bill 368 that the department could deal with the issue of unintended diversion of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine from prescription, over-the-counter, or natural health product sources?
It's something I couldn't conclude right now, Mr. Chair. It's something we would have to examine, what alternate ways. Again, because the way we did do it is both through an interim order, which has limitations, but then also with the supplemental rules. Alternate ways would need to be examined. Again, making an instrument takes a lot of deliberation, even if it's a governor and council proposal.
So through you, Chair, though, what you just said was basically, for the benefit of Canadians, changing the rules is very difficult.
Mr. Chair, I think what I'm trying to indicate is that the production of methamphetamine is a very important problem for the department and Canadians. We put a tool in place. It mitigates that risk. But the other benefit is it allows the natural health product to still be sold. And so it's a very well-tailored instrument to use. That's really the departmental thinking, and the supplemental rules set up actually allows for that balance between availability still and making sure that that abuse doesn't occur. That's really what I think the intention is of the instrument.
So if you continued down the same road in which the department is on at the current time and renewed the supplemental rules that you have, that's also a possibility. Is it true?
As a legislative proposal, once again, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That would be the will of Parliament.
But if this particular sub-amendment, which again is substantive, were defeated here, there's no reason that the will of Parliament could not be used to renew the supplemental rules to which you've already alluded.
I think, Mr. Chair, that's beyond me to answer. I'm an official with technical advice that goes into parliamentary opportunity and procedure.
So it's really the will of Parliament to do that, but absolutely it could be done.
If you're talking about placing something in the Food and Drugs Act, yes, that's the process.
Yeah. Again, I think what we've heard from Mr. Lee is that these changes are difficult. Obviously, this NDP Liberal government has not made these changes for some reason, and again, have waited till the 11th hour to attempt to sub-amend an amendment inside a bill, which is not their own, to regulate problems that they can't see fit to regulate themselves out of, which I find absolutely difficult to believe. So, you know, and again, Chair, I would suggest to you that this is a substantive amendment because of the fact that an entire department can't see its way to regulate out of this, and it would take some time. It would take an act of Parliament, and here in this committee, we are expected to accept a sub-amendment as not being substantive, deliberate on it without any prior warning, and then make a decision which an entire government department cannot make in several years. I think that is, if that's not the definition of a substantive amendment or a sub-amendment, I don't know what is. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Chair, just really quickly, I'm very concerned about the use of ephedrine when it comes